Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Amina Al Sharif, and I am with the Data Ethics Consortium for Security. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Nate Rackiewicz, Chief Data Officer at Gannett. So let's go ahead and get started. Nate, it's really nice to see you on this interview today. Why don't you go ahead and give a brief introduction of yourself for our audience?
Sure. Thanks, Amina. I really appreciate it. And I've got a last name that I like to tell people when they complain about it. In my family, I say it's presidential because there was a President Rackiewicz of Poland at one point. But thank you, though. No, I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. I grew up in Northern Virginia, went to college out in the Midwest, and then came out to New York City after college and have been here in the New York City area and with COVID in the New Jersey area since. And I'm really excited to be here, Chief Data Officer at Gannett, part of the Gannett USA Today network. If you're not familiar with that, it's USA Today plus about 250 local publishers around the country, plus publications around the world. I think that we've got one of the largest footprints of both local news and national news that's out there. And I think it's a wealth of amazing content here at Gannett, and I'm thrilled to be part of the team.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and get started. Just as a brief background on me, I do come from the defense kind of background, so I might have some it will be interesting to see kind of how the media piece of things plays into tech and transformation and data science in the defense space too. So I'll try to point those items out when I see them. But let's start with the first question. The first question that we have is around digital transformation. How to accelerate digital transformation in an organization. And so my question to you, Nate, is how hard or easy was it to introduce data science as a practice to the media industry? Was it considered a more innovative pivot that might have been maybe met with resistance, or was the vertical already kind of well established and migrating towards a data-centric model organically within the vertical that you work in?
So what I would say is digital transformation or data transformation is very difficult for any company to go through, right? And I would say that in my experience across multiple media companies, that it grew more organically than it was any big top-down monumental shift. And so, if you think about how does something like that grow organically, it depending on the media company. I've been in the television industry, both on the subscription side and on the advertising side, spent some time in radio, spent some time in video games, spent some time now in news publishing. And so, the drive for it and that organic growth for it is different in different areas. So if you think about data, it's there to enable that digital transformation, and that digital transformation is there to enable a business outcome. And so if I go back and think digital transformation, my earliest mix with that was probably in college. I managed the campus radio station at the University of Notre Dame. And it was just a regular broadcast station. And I worked with Adele Lannon in administration there to move it onto the internet, so streaming. So that was my first real taste of digital transformation. After college, I ended up going to HBO and spent about 18 years there and went through that whole digital transformation process. I was fortunate to work on Mike Gabriel's team over there. He was the CIO. He was the person that really envisioned the HBO Go platform and built it internally within his own team. And so being part of that team and seeing that whole that digital push and the launch of HBO Go back around 2010 was really a blessing. I learned just so much from that, but also, the unique data that helped enable that was different than, the data that would enable it perhaps in radio. Over at A&E Networks, where I went after HBO, they hired me to build out a center of excellence for data science and advanced analytics. A&E Networks by that time had already started their streaming products, but what was unique to that in their transformation was that they were working on subscription-based products. And so I got to be part of the team that was enabling the launch of a product called History Vault, which was for History Channel, and Lifetime Movie Club, which was for Lifetime. Lifetime movies are great if you just want to sit back and enjoy something that doesn't make you think too much. Yeah. And so when I went over to the video game industry, digital transformation there was different than what I just described at the prior two places, because the big push for digital was happening in the midst of an industry where physical product was how you shipped games to consumers. And that big digital transformation was from physical product to digital distribution. And then with that, it also enabled all of the online capabilities. So if you think through at Take-Two Interactive, they're home to Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto Online is this massive universe of content. And so that was the transformation that was going on there. And that really steps them into this whole conversation around the metaverse, right? And so, they, their CEO in their last earnings call, Strauss, who's brilliant, was talking about, hey, look, there's this big buzzword out there called metaverse that everybody's going after, right? And he just simply pointed out, we've got the biggest metaverse in the world within the video game space. So really neat stuff, but different drivers for that. When you think about digital transformation and you think about the analytics that enable it, what I try to advocate for is a common analytics journey. And that journey goes from descriptive analytics to predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics, right? And so on a descriptive side, simply that means what happened, right? And you'd be surprised how many people have a hard time answering what happened. On a predictive side, you're trying to answer the question, what will happen? On the prescriptive side, you're trying to answer the question, what should happen? And the role of data science play a role in each of those. So for instance, data analytics to drive descriptive analytics to answer the question of what happened is key. As you get into predictive and prescriptive analytics, that's really where this role of data science that you asked about steps in. And so when we bring together data science, it's here's your hardcore math skills, your science skills, and all that stuff. And I love that you have a military background because for me, this whole analytics journey is actually very personal for me because I mentioned I grew up down there in the DC area, and my dad was actually a nuclear engineer. He worked for naval reactors in the U.S. Navy. And so I was born in DC. My mom worked on Capitol Hill. My dad worked for the DOD. And I remember, growing up, I was the oldest of 6 kids, so big family. And, my dad, a nuclear engineer, and these are these nerdy math, you've worked with them, these really nerdy math and science Poindexter types. And my dad's a great dad, love him to death. But, he literally wore pocket protectors at times. And like total Poindexter stuff, right? Nuclear engineering, like these guys are powering the ships of the Navy. He was going onto submarines and onto aircraft carriers and all that stuff. And I just remember as a kid, I'm like, oh God, my dad's a nuclear engineer. Like I'd have a simple algebra question in high school or something like that. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. And I needed his help with it. And I'd go to him and I'd say, hey, Dad, I need help with this algebra problem. Here comes Poindexter with his pocket. Well, he didn't have his pocket protector in. And, I find myself 45 minutes later, an hour later, and he's teaching me about the foundations of calculus. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, come on. I said, just give me the answer to this thing, right? And so, he spent his career in the Navy. And it was funny because fast forward several years, when he retired from naval reactors, I went to the retirement thing. And apparently it wasn't just me, because his coworkers actually had a term for this. They called it getting racked. So there was actually a term for that.
Sounds severe.
And then I think about another brilliant person in my family, my grandfather on my mother's side. He spent his career in the U.S. Army and actually did military intelligence at the Pentagon. And so if you've done that military intelligence type of work, you're just swimming in just loads of data and analytics, right? And so, that's what he was spending his career doing. And I remember visiting him in Southern Virginia, as a kid, and you'd go up to him, same thing. Hey, Granddad, I got a question here for you. And he's over there buried in this mounds of data that he's looking through and sifting through. And he turns over to me and he's like, hey, come here, I'm going to show you something, right? And he pulls it out, and it's all this data that he's showing me. He's got his pencil out. He's doing this on paper, and he's showing me how he methodically goes through and analyzes data, looking for insights. And I just found that fascinating. I didn't understand half of what he was talking about. And I'm like, well, that's great. But, the conversation would go on. And I'm like, well, Granddad, I was just looking for some help turning on the TV to watch a kid's show. And so it's like, this is when you grow up.
Turned into a whole intelligence operation just to get the TV turned on.
Exactly. So, when you think about that analytics journey, it's data analytics, like what he was teaching me in military intelligence. It's math and science, like my dad was teaching me, even though I was just trying to answer some simple questions. And, I've got one person to my left, one person to my right, and I'm just saying, hey, I'm hungry for a sandwich here. So it's fun to grow up around that. And when you think about the work that they're doing, And how does that apply in the media space? Well, all of these things are in service to something else, right? What was the work that they were doing in service to? What was the outcome that they were trying to achieve with this work, with this math, science, analytics? Well, the outcome there was national security, right? And so that's where the data science was in service to something else. And in that case, it was national security. So when I think about the businesses that I've been in, HBO, what was that in service to? I don't know, I guess.
The masses watching HBO. I mean, HBO Go is one of the most used services, I feel like now, platform-wise.
It turned into that, and then they rebranded it HBO Max, which they're taking global now. And I think you're right. I think the outcome there is a premium content experience for consumers, right?
Yeah.